Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Red Homestead. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today we're talking Nebraska, Colorado, and the biggest takeaways from the Nebraska UTEP game and the biggest X factors for that Buffalo Cornhusker game. I mean, there is so much to talk about a game that's going to define either program with X factors that are going to truly decide the game all over the board. It's going to be a fun one to get into. Caleb, come on, how you doing?
Welcome, Colorado fans that just became fans last year. It's nice to see you. I know that you had to research what a rivalry game is specifically between Nebraska and Colorado because you had no basis, because you have no clue about being a Colorado fan till last year. But we're really excited to have you. I'm excited you fell for
making
the
a lot of friends early. Very nice of you.
We're so excited to cover your trash team and just what a poverty franchise you are. I'm just so excited to talk about it this week. We just welcome you so much to Lincoln. I can't wait to have you under the lights Saturday night. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, a night game at Memorial Stadium, obviously, it's going to be a crazy one. And Colorado fans, it's good to have you. We're excited to break down Shedeur Sanders. He is fun to watch, no doubt. So it's going to be interesting. Okay. So obviously, we have a ton to talk about, so let's just get right into it. Let's start a little bit here. Obviously, the first game of the year, UTEP, Nebraska. We have a lot of takeaways from this game that are going to drastically impact how we approach this Colorado game this week. So let's start with the headliners here. On the offensive side for Nebraska, what were your immediate reactions to this new system with Dylan Raiola at the helm? Break it down for me. What are your thoughts on the Dylan Raiola?
It's incredible to not be a one-dimensional team. It is so awesome to have opponents have to respect your pass game and your rush game. We didn't have that last year. We were a great running team, and we blocked really well with having, again, no passing whatsoever. We hadn't thrown over 200 yards in a full season, that for a full year. And then Dylan, the greatest quarterback that I've ever seen at the University of Nebraska ever, period, ever. He is the best quarterback to ever play at Nebraska. I've seen him one game.
Word.
It's the play for me, besides the 2nd and 30, Patrick Mahomes sidearm throw. That was incredible. The one that really got for me was, again, I saw him. This is, again, a true freshman. The check down on the run play where he audibles out twice and we rip it off for 40 yards. It blew my mind. I was in the fans just geeking out like, oh my gosh, he recognized the defense. And the free ball, again, the touchdown. It didn't end up being a touchdown, but again, he recognized the offsides. He went straight for it, tried to make a touchdown play, just understanding it was a free play. Again, that's just stuff that a freshman doesn't usually have. Again, I said it before, like I already saw the stuff at the spring game to know that this guy is different than anything we've ever had. But to see it again, live snaps against a new team, a defense that's been prepping for you for all off season, it's incredible. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, clearly UTEP, of course, bringing in so many new pieces. It was tough at first to figure out exactly where we're at with how good UTEP is and what type of talent we're playing against. But regardless, I think the offense handled it really, really well. And now with Satterfield having this new look team with incredibly improved personnel, it really enables Satterfield to call the type of offense that he actually wants to call and the type of offenses that he ran at South Carolina. I think it's gonna feel like a much more natural system this year. Raiola and the pass catchers really enable that for him, and of course the improved pass blocking in this game also helped. But Raiola, to your point, I mean, he looked, of course, great. I mean, his poise in the pocket was incredible. His touchdown field, fantastic. Ball placement towards the sidelines was elite. And just a comfort in the pocket as well. Just really, really nice. And steps into throws confidently. I mean, the throw to Nair with the pressure in his face. How many times have we seen Husker quarterbacks underthrow that ball with a defender's hand hitting your passing arm? That gets picked off like 80%, 90% of the time. And Dylan drops it in the basket to the sideline to Nair. I mean, it's beautiful. And in this game, he had 0 turnover-worthy plays. That's the dream for Nebraska fans. I mean, last year where Nebraska broke like every record that there is when it comes to turnover-worthy plays. And for Dylan to come in here and start off with a big old 0 there is beautiful. And I mean, when it comes to grades, one incredible grade was he had a 91.2 passing grade without play action, which was the 7th best in the country last week. Shedeur Sanders was number 6, interestingly enough. It just shows that his talent, when he has a chance to throw the ball like this, he's dangerous. And he throws the ball in places that's about as good as anyone can in the country. The upside there is legitimate. So He was obviously great downfield, great in the intermediate. And so overall, there were still some things I think that you could work on there, especially when it came to play action specifically. I mean, he had a 45.2 PFF grade in play action. So that'll be something to watch this week, I think. But 114th in the country last week. So that is something that, Dylan's not perfect by any means yet. But there's a lot to like, obviously. And he was even great under pressure. So it's just so many things that you take away and you're like, yep, okay, the hype's real here for Raiola. This is only week 1.
I didn't understand how starved I was for fun quarterback play until last week when I was finally met with a meal. It was so fun to watch as a Husker fan. And like you said with the pass protection too, the offensive line looked really improved. And you could be like, the Colorado fans are like, oh man, it's UTEP, guys, calm down. To be fair, like in the last 5 years specifically, we couldn't have handled UTEP. And then the run game, it was really fun too. We had 4 different running backs all get a quality amount of snaps, as we saw on the depth chart, and that it came to fruition. Ramir ended up getting the most snaps at 29 in the end. He looked great, especially in pass pro, and a big reason why our pockets look so nice. Emmett got 19 carries and he ended up with the most yards. Dowdell looked good, but he dropped the ball. So, again, we really didn't see as much of him. And Gabe in those touchdown situations, in the red zone, looked to be just a solid back that could find, had a great nose for the end zone. So a guy that you can trust on those, third down situations. It's really exciting to see that all of our running backs showed sparks and flashes of,
there's legitimate depth.
I see why there was auras to their name. Ramir in the second half ran hard. Emmett, again, he had the biggest run of the day. And also, again, just those the cuts, jabs, the jukes. And then Dowdell, again, I was impressed with his speed and burst through hitting the hole. And
yeah, exactly. I was impressed with Ramir's burst and elusiveness. I think was really jumping off the page. I mean, so exciting to see coming off the injury. So I'm with you. I mean, we're 4 deep there. Of course, Dowdell's fumble, not ideal. And we'll talk more about that in the X factors. But when you pair that with the offensive line performance and the receivers, suddenly you really have equipped Raiola with everything he needs to find success here. And I think we saw that really come to fruition here. So let's talk about the receivers then. And, give me your thoughts here on the breakout of Isaiah Neyor, a guy we had tons of questions going into this game.
We were tough on even if we would put him on the breakouts list because we were so concerned, especially being healthy at Texas and playing 1 snap. Years. And wow, were we wrong? It's so exciting because we said it in the video. If he's legit, then watch out for this season for Nebraska's offense. And well, now watch out for this season. He was so impressive. The touchdown, the balance, obviously on that one. But again, in other spots, he was really reliable, had multiple targets and looked to be he got open. His route work off of the line, his breaks were really clean. I can't wait for a full season paired with Banks, who we knew was just going to be the touchdown, the end zone stud that he was. Neyor looks incredible. You see why Malachi and Jalen Lloyd lost out on the depth chart to him, because he had that veteran ability and a guy that was hungry. It was great seeing the press conference too. Someone who was like, it felt like, I'd been in jail, taken away from something I love from football these last 2 years. It's exciting to see him be able to feed and celebrate that touchdout. And 100%. You saw that energy that he had, especially on that touchdown run. I'm so excited for him and his season. And again, watch out.
And the film jumped off the page for him at Wyoming. He was an absolute burner down the field and a huge playmaker and broke records there. So the question was, was he behind the talent at Texas? And now I think we have an answer. That's just super exciting. I think overall, when you talk about Neyor and Banks paired together, having a lack of physical receivers last year was a legitimate problem. And we talked about how both of the freshmen at times were bullied off their routes, had a lack of balance going up for the ball, and were losing the battle in contested catches. And then this year we see both of these guys coming across the middle of the field, making plays down the sidelines, being physical. And immediately, as a defense, you have to respect that. And then that creates for pass interference calls downfield. And that extends drives and moves the chains. I mean, like you said, when it comes to offensive line play, talk about this. Week 1, Nebraska is 27th in the country now in pass blocking after week 1 in grades on PFF, and 43rd in pass blocking efficiency. We haven't been in those ranges in years. So just even after a week 1 game, let alone, any other time in the season. And so give me your thoughts here on some of the improvement.
Again, it looks like we can be top half, even better, top third in the country with those stats, even at UTEP. If we round out at 50th, that is somewhere that we've not even sniffed,
And in our Dylan Raiola predictions video about his expectations for the season, we talked about like the baseline is, if a 5-star quarterback looks good in the first 2 or 3 weeks and he has an offensive line that is respectable, the combination there means, there's a huge hit rate for success. And so we've already checked the one box where Dylan has shown it in one game already. And now it's like this offensive line can keep this up. I mean, this is lining up to be pretty special.
On the second rewatch, things just got prettier. The offensive line looked prettier. Lindenmeyer specifically, just a huge addition for us on that blocking tight ends. Fedoni looks much improved in the blocking. While he may have looked worse in the passing game, going into 12 personnel, getting those two guys out was a catalyst for us in the run game, was a catalyst for us giving Raiola time, getting those chip blocks, giving Turner, who still has struggle, and Benhart, who still struggles, who I still will worry about as the season goes on. But being able to mask that with some solid tight end blocking, where it can be duos, we can cover this up. We can make this better. And now having to respect the duality of us actually being able to pass the ball and run the ball, it really gets you excited. And
because the interior guys, Ben Scott, Mazuka, and Justin Evans-Jenkins, they all graded incredibly well in the 80s, the mid 80s in pass block.
And you saw it. I was really impressed with Ben Scott at the point of attack.
So this offensive line looks like a much more athletic, well-rounded unit this year already.
Execution, and again, so much.
I don't think we're overreacting, at least to start the season here. So that's exciting. So on the defensive side, there was a little bit less. There were less takeaways, and we're going to learn a lot more about this defense. We'll probably talk much more extensively about the defense after this week, considering this offense is going to be a lot more testy. But we did learn a few things, and specifically because UTEP came out in incredible speed. I mean, they were snapping the ball with 15 seconds on the clock. They were using the in-game, the new quarterback headsets to basically read our defense and actually make calls on the field to the quarterback as the ball was being snapped. So like they were using everything to their advantage here to try to get a leg up. What to you were the biggest takeaways here on the defensive side?
We had the most questions with our linebacking core specifically because we felt there was the most moving parts, and also somewhat on the secondary as well because we had a lot of new additions. But for the most part, you're right. This defense is mostly baked in. We learned so much about them last year and what they brought specifically, at the defensive line. So many of our corners and safeties, we know what they bring to the table. But how does our linebackers had a lot of room to grow and a lot of different bodies that you could choose. We saw that Mekhi ended up getting the start, and he looked great on run defense. But again, the coverage was still a problem. Granted, that spread offense of what Scotty Walden was doing, getting the ball out so fast, hitting those spaces exactly what they wanted. And we got to see that tested on each and every one of our guys, which is going to be important for the Colorado game.
Exactly.
And so we saw that. We saw Thompson ended up grading one of the better on the pass coverage, which is exciting because that was bad last year because he got a little bit heavy. And so he was used a little more in the interior, but trusting him to be able to cover some of those spaces is something that was really exciting for me.
That was highlighted for us going into this game. And so to see Stephen Thompson come out and he was actually the 25th highest graded linebacker in the country last week in zone coverage. And that's a huge, huge win for us to know that he's at least capable. We sucked at zone last year. Exactly. To know that we have a guy who's at least capable of getting out there, filling zones and playing his role. And we saw an improvement also from John Bullock. And like you said, Mekhi Bayer. And so the linebacking core as a whole, I think they're pretty exciting.
Yeah. And again, we have so many parts that we can trust. We have so many pieces that we can plug in different spots. And while Vince Shavers may have underachieved because, it's his first game as a freshman.
I wouldn't call it underachieving. Yeah. I mean, he played 19 snaps as a true freshman in his first game. It's pretty exciting.
Not many snaps to be had.
He had a 59 PFF grade. So if he had got a 60 PFF grade, I feel like people would have felt better about it. But to me, it was you're pretty excited about that. Think about Hossman when he came in. His first few weeks were pretty ugly, but by the end of his freshman year, Ernest Hossman looked great. So I expect the same thing for Vince Shaver.
The defense, we know what we're going to get. We have so many veteran guys, and they're wanting another shot at this Colorado team, which we learned a lot about in this, way more about in this awesome North Dakota State University game. I'm so appreciative that the Bison played Colorado week 1. This is huge tape for Nebraska. And I think an X factor in itself, seeing them stretch to their limits, needing Travis Hunter to play both sides of the ball. I felt like I really learned a lot about Colorado, especially on that second watch through after, just the passively seeing on
which
my
you
TV
can watch us do on Patreon.
Yes. So watch us break down some of this film where, again, we really see a lot. And some of the mistakes that North Dakota State made that, again, real time on TV, you notice the great catch. But now being able to kind of break down some of those defenses, I feel a lot more confident. Yeah, so the odds for Colorado. Nebraska right now, favored 7.5. It opened at 6.5.
Pretty crazy.
Really depends on what book. It's exciting. The night game at Memorial Stadium is definitely part of it. And then the over-under makes sense. It's 57.5. That's about 10 more points than last game. So both higher octane offenses. It's no surprise that that's what it's going to be.
And so that's a pretty high scoring game already off the books for Vegas. And obviously Colorado is coming into the year fringe bowl game type of Vegas odds, like at 5.5 or 6 flat, depending on which way you were looking. So there was a lot of questions for Colorado, obviously bringing in a new offensive coordinator, bringing in Pat Shurmur as OC, kind of like that pro style approach. He was the OC last year for the last 4 games of the year, which were pretty ugly for Colorado. But then they also brought in a new defensive coordinator in Robert Livingston, who was the Bengals safeties and DBs coach last year, or for the last 7 years, and which was a bit of a surprising hire in my opinion. And we'll definitely talk about some of those things and X factors here in the future as well. So let's start on the offensive side and talk about the front page news here, which is Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. So lead the way here. What are your thoughts on this Colorado offense and the studs that make this offense work?
Shedeur Sanders, last year, after watching the game, we both said that he looks like a top 5 draft pick. And he looks exactly the same still. I mean, some of the throws that he makes are absolutely incredible. I appreciate the arm strength, the way that he can just elongate plays with his legs to keep his eyes downfield, those scramble drills that he's so able to create. He could just make all the throws. It's really impressive.
He had 445 yards against NDSU.
The one that stood out to me was just a 5-yard out that he threw while just getting mauled by the defense and no form whatsoever, but just having the arm strength to get out to Travis Hunter on a 5-yard throw is something that, you need to do as an NFL QB. You just see it over and over again, how impressive he is. 445 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's a game breaker.
Right. I mean, Nebraska experienced this last year. Of course, Colorado won the game 36-14, and Shedeur Sanders, the amount of times he nearly escaped pressure, or he just barely escaped pressure, and then heaved the ball downfield or made one read on a wolf blitz and got the ball out, something like that. He's a game changer and obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Last week, he had a 90.4 pass grade while under pressure, which is a career high for him, and multiple big time throws while under pressure, no turnover worthy plays while under pressure. And he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country while under pressure. I mean, last year, he had only a 1.6% turnover worthy play rate and only 3 INTs on the season, which is one of the best in the country. And he had a high average of the target and big time throw rate. So he was taking way more shots downfield than most of the other quarterbacks in the top 10. His ability to just, see the field and anticipate pressure is super impressive. And then he has the mobility in the pocket to extend the plays, and their scramble drills are just deadly. And that's really what beat North Dakota in this game.
Yeah. And his favorite target, Travis Hunter, who had 3 of those touchdowns, was the other side of that offensive coin. Travis Hunter now seems to me, if I were an NFL GM, I'm drafting him because of his wide receiver ability. His hands have always been so impressive, but that 3rd touchdown that he had where it was clear PI from the North Dakota State player while he's falling away, catching it around him, and then to have the arm strength to just hold that football. And again, the balance that he has, the body control, the depth of catch. He had 132 yards. He's a real menace and just such a surefire red zone target, which I think is something that he's really added besides being the burner that he was. And again, a great route runner already, but some of that strength that he's added this year has really just spilled him over to me as one of those top wide receivers for the league for next year. And
he played 137 snaps.
And so fit. Again, it's
insane, man.
It's so impressive how fit he is. You highlight those two. You look at also, Jimmy Horn. Shedeur's got to get it to somebody. He had 7 catches for 198 yards and a touchdown as well. I was unimpressed with North Dakota's coverage ability just in general. I think as an FCS school, you're outmatched anyway.
Their safeties had a rough day.
But yeah, those safeties, they were not in the right spot. They got a lot of good tape on that. First year And they didn't have to play as deep as they did, against a team like that. But besides like the good, Colorado is such an interesting team, right? Dion was able to bring in, again, his son and Travis Hunter, and they're just great players, probably NFL caliber. But then you sift down, and very quickly this team goes from, man, those guys are top NFL picks too. Oh, I mean, I remember why Colorado was 1-11.
Well, yeah. Were you impressed how impressed were you with their run game in this game?
Exactly, non-existent. 59 total yards. The good news for Nebraska is they can't run the ball. The bad news is they really don't have to because Shedeur Sanders is so good, but they are absolutely one-dimensional. We'll get to talk about that later. But yeah, their offensive line still Power 5, worse, 56 sacks last year.
Right, that was Jordan Seaton's first game as a true freshman 5-star, and so he actually ended up playing pretty well. He had a 64.6 pass PFF grade, pass blocking grade in that game. So it's respectable for a true freshman first game at left tackle. But yeah, I think overall, you have to ask, like, the one-dimensional aspect of this offense is a legitimate problem. And so we'll talk more about that, in the X factors for sure. I mean, they brought in a bunch of guys on the offensive side as receiving guys who come in and play. But I think, like you said, the highlight is Horn and Hunter. And then the rest of the guys are pretty much ancillary pieces, and a good quarterback is going to find the open player to get him the ball, And so that's really what you end up seeing on that side of the ball. And the running game is just whatever else is left over. So on the defensive side, the highlight there was, the big exciting thing for Colorado was this defensive line is going to be insane, and Warren Sapp is coaching this team. And so what were your first impressions of the defense coming into this game? And what are your thoughts implementing this new defensive scheme, 4-2-5 type of style here, and how they played as a whole?
While they brought in some good edge rushers, it just overall felt lackluster. They were able to get some tackles for loss, which was nice, and they were able to create pressure. But North Dakota's quarterback did a good job of being able to extend the pocket and create space. And while I think exteriorly on the edge they were impressive, their interior defensive line did not look good. And that was still a problem for them on the tape. And while, yes, sometimes they could beat you on the edge, if you're only kind of beating, North Dakota State on the edge, Nebraska has a lot bigger offensive linemen, a lot more guys that are NFL bodies that North Dakota State just doesn't have. Some of the speed was there for them a little bit, but I wasn't impressed enough that you would hope to be, even though it's North Dakota State.
Right. I'm with you. I think, again, the depth is the question here. The transfers they brought in, the playmakers, to me, the standout was Chidozie Nwankwo from Houston, the fifth-year senior on the D-line. He seemed to actually get to the quarterback, had some nice pressures, and impacted the play impressively, in my opinion. But outside of that, the rest seemed okay at best.
Yeah.
So then you look at the secondary, and that's where you have like Shedeur Sanders and those guys who seem to be all right. But the question for me is just in general, the depth here is a question mark, and at linebacker is the biggest question, which we'll talk about in the X factors as something that's going to literally make or break this game for Colorado, I think. Or one thing that was noticeable from their DBs in this game, specifically in zone coverage for this team, we'll talk about it more in the X factors, but they played a ton of man this game. So the question mark for me is, do they know how to play zone? Can they play zone? And that's what gets me worried. So with that said, let's get into the X factors and talk about what's going to make or break this game. So what first comes to mind for you when you talk about the make or breaks for this game?
This game is won at the line of scrimmage, but specifically it's Nebraska's run game. One thing that really impressed me from North Dakota State was winning the time of possession clock. They absolutely ate up and had like 15 more minutes than Colorado, which is genius. And I think something that you need to do with a team that's this fast, you don't want to give them that many chances. You have to make them earn it each and every time. And I think
it's
Nebraska
the Tom Brady strategy.
Yeah, exactly. This works. Nebraska's offensive line looked great. And again, their interior defensive line looked like their weakness, and that's Nebraska's strength. I imagine us pounding it up the gut over and over continuously on Colorado. And if we continue to find success with all of our different running backs, it's a long game for Colorado, I think, because they're just not going to have enough time on the field. I was so impressed again with Lindenmeyer and his ability and to trust all those running backs to make great plays, and their linebacking core looking slow, inefficient, not great at tackling, not good in space, not good in coverage. That's a tough sled for a Colorado team.
People highlight, of course, the upside for Colorado, but you have to acknowledge what happened to Colorado in the second half of last year. They got destroyed. It was horrible. And so the question mark for me is, the first thing is, last year, did Nebraska uncover the weaknesses of Colorado? And Oregon really exposed them. It's hard for me to picture that they're just going to go from like squeaking it past North Dakota State and then suddenly be a team that's going to compete at a really high level right away. To me, even though they brought in a lot of new guys, this team has a very similar core identity and their offense runs very similarly. Their defense is a little bit different and definitely somewhat improved. But at the end of the day, they still have significant blatant weaknesses that you can even see against a team like North Dakota. So Nebraska's going to have an opportunity here to expose this linebacking core and take advantage of the man coverage. So like, this is what I was trying to talk about there was Colorado played cover one max, which is cover one man coverage, 69.4% of the time. Last year in all of college football, or in the Power Five, only two teams in the country ran it more than 47% of the time, which was Purdue and Illinois. So they were running it all the time. So for me, the question mark is, was this just their game plan versus North Dakota to force them to pass the ball downfield? Or is this because they genuinely think that they suck at zone coverage? If that's the case, then this could be a trend that continues. And in that case, there's a lot of ways you can beat man coverage in the long run in a game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it is the latter. They have some strengths, but again, their defense just, you can use your best corners, right? Trying to lock up their top two guys with Hunter and Shiloh, and then hope that gives you enough time. But that doesn't protect this running up the middle. And Nebraska is just going to be able to continuously do it. And then you have to worry about the Dillon threat.
I'm with you. I think it might be that they're bad in zone and they're trying to hide it. Because last week in the zone coverage that they did play the 30% of the time, for example, their linebacker Trevor Woods was 250th out of 256 linebackers in the country graded in zone coverage. Their other linebacker, Levante Bentley, was 250th or just in the 250s as well. And then their DBs, so like DJ McKinney and Preston Doge, were 248th and 245th out of 324 DBs in zone coverage. So they were really struggling in zone last week. And so I think this is a really good matchup for Nebraska in that regard, where if we can, attack them in man, that's fantastic. Well, if they play zone, even better. They're terrible in zone. So to me, it's like they're not as scary in that regard, and they're playing to their strengths, which is their talent on the defensive side and Travis Hunter and lockdown man in that regard. But if you have enough weapons, like North Dakota is obviously going to be lacking the depth, but we have now a more balanced offense. In my opinion, that's a huge X factor where, okay, you can take away Banks, but can you take away Nair? Can you take away Ja'Cory Barney underneath? And so I think we just have the playmakers in a better, to the level that we need to have this year versus last year, that will give us the ability to expose them, i.e. what USC, what Oregon, what Washington State did last year. So there is a lot of opportunity here to expose this defense.
If one of those linebackers happens to get a Ja'Cory Barney on man, like, good night, see you later, that's 7. He's so fast, and it gets you really excited to attack those middles. Even Janirin Bonner, he's going to feast in the middle as a slot receiver, and you feel really good, especially in the slot matchups. I guess that moves on to the defensive side of the ball and their offense. What are the X factors for me? And again, starting at the line, again, that point of attack, it just really looks like to me that Ty Robinson versus Hank Zielinskis, there is something I'm circling. Ty Robinson had one of the best games that I've seen him play last week, I thought, just in the middle, just being a menace in zero technique against the center. And Zielinskis was not good against North Dakota State.
That's Colorado's starting center.
Yeah, Colorado's starting center. He had a 42.6 pass block grade, and it showed. Again, while their exterior line, where they have a solid, left tackle and they have solid edge rushers, the inside the middle, again, in between the tackles, where I think Nebraska can really,
which is
have
our
an
strength,
advantage, which is our strength. Come and have I think Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher can really have a day. Can we get home? Can we capitalize? Can we finish this off? Can they create enough havoc where our linebackers can finish these guys off, where our defensive ends can finish off Shedeur Sanders to again really create this problem? I think they'll have a great chance. Can our safeties and corners play a great solid time where Shedeur is going to have to throw this away? I think it can happen. I think Ty Robinson is going to eat and feast this game on Colorado's interior line. And I would be really worried if I was Colorado's offensive line coach. This could be a game where Nebraska, like last year, this team might run for negative yards.
It's plausible. It really is. Especially if we can get home against Shedeur and you count those negative stack yards. The stat
especially.
and so I'm with you there. I think I love it. But then the next step though is that okay, you can get the pressure on with Ty Robinson and Nash. And we saw that last year. I mean, both of them had pressures in that game. The problem was getting home against Shedeur and actually getting him to the ground was the real problem. Sure, we had plenty of sacks last year. We had a lot. But we could have easily had like double that many if we actually got home when we should have and contained the edges to a better degree. And so I really do think that the coaching staff will learn a lot from that game last year. And we should see more effectively schemed to control the flats to allow for us to contain Shedeur in the scramble drills. I mean, a guy like Princeville Umanmielen, and this is one of my other X factors and something that I was going to say later, but something that I really want to see in this game is Princeville to be on the field a lot because he's just a more athletic player than MJ Sherman. He has obviously a higher top end speed, and he's just in general, I think, a little bit more agile of a player that allows him to get home against Shedeur. I want to see it. Obviously, the upside's there for Princeville. So that's an X factor for me. It's just finding ways to capitalize on that interior pressure and either get him to throw the ball away or get him down to the ground in the backfield. And so having like a sink defender in the flats and then flooding Shedeur to that side, let the defender come up, make the play. Like you have to scheme it that way and know that Shedeur is going to get out. And so that's a huge X factor for me in this game.
Yeah, and the last defensive one really for me is how bad North Dakota State's safeties played. Again, and how much home run balls that they can really hit on you. It's how is Deshaun Singleton and how is Malcolm Hartzog going to play this game? Because we need them to be impressive for us to be able to stop. And again, they have to earn it because North Dakota too often allowed just huge plays from Horn, specifically Horn. And just, again, there was just way too much space. Again, because they were worried, they were not pressing these guys. They were letting them just come off the brakes free. And it really hurt them in a lot of ways. And so I think Nebraska being physical with this team, being a Big Ten, secondary that we are, playing physical, having, again, Buford, Isaac, Deshaun, being able to protect our home and not allow anything really coming over the top.
The 3-3-5 is really built well for this to keep the play in front of you. Have three safeties in the back. We need him to. You can easily drop into cover three, have three guys who are proficient in zone coverage to make and cover the field like that. And we know we trust those three guys. We trust Singleton, Gifford, and Hartzog to make plays downfield. And so versus a North Dakota team who's way less equipped for that, you'd assume that we're going to be
4-2. Yeah.
Right. You're going to assume we're going to be way more prepared to keep the play in front of us. And we've already seen Colorado do this once. We know what's coming. And again, Colorado fans, I think that they claim the big win, the blowout win last year. I mean, that game was essentially 0-0 near halftime last year because the defense was shutting them down. Our offense couldn't do anything because Jeff Sims was at the helm. And
we could turn the ball over. We were pretty good at that.
We could, fumble snaps and turn the ball over. But
and that goes to a great point of the fact that North Dakota State had a huge lead almost at halftime too. And then they let Shedeur Sanders in the 2-minute drill just drive the football down. We have to close out halves. Clock. You have to manage the clock and close out halves because giving him time, especially in those 2-minute drills where that offense feels a little bit more free flowing, where they're moving down the field quickly.
And then you're playing padded coverage and just trying to keep it in front, but then he'll eats away.
He'll eat that alive. And he absolutely did against North Dakota State, and any team that allows him to do that. So to be able to suffocate that clock and not let him get the ball right before half is huge because what we saw with Dylan, when you have a great QB, like even what Dylan did, with 50 seconds, we go down and score a touchdown, giving those QBs just time to run that 2-minute drill, which is something every team, is practicing and drilling every single day, probably in practice, especially a guy who's an elite NFL talent like Shedeur or like Dylan. It's easy pickings for 3-7.
100%. So are there any other things that you want to see in this game, just more specifically from a Husker perspective? Like, what are you looking for in this game? Like offensively, running backs, defensive line, what are you looking for?
I know Rhule said in the press conference that he let Dowdell back in. But if you feel like you have 4 running backs, you have to stick with your word that turnovers matter. I don't want to see him in this game because we can't afford to cough up the ball. This game is way too. Every game is way too important.
You have 4 competent RBs. Why force the guy who fumbled to play?
Yeah, why put him in that position? Give it to Ramir. Give it to, specifically Emmett. Emmett looks so good. Ramir looks so good. You trust Gabe. You know, if Gabe and Dowdell are 2 guys that you trust in those, short yardage situations, just give it to Gabe, especially because we saw him score 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, he's a veteran. He's a guy who's been here and a guy who doesn't cough up the football because we just can't. Turnovers we knew killed us last year. We gave up 4. And so I just don't want to see Dowdell this week. Let him earn it back in northern Iowa, but not here.
Well, and guess what? NDSU, they had no turnovers. That's why the game was close. And so you just can't give away points like this. Obviously, on the defensive side for me is just in general, and this is a season-long question, and we didn't get to really see it last week. We really wanted to, and it just wasn't there yet, was how are we going to get pressure with 4? And in a game against Shedeur Sanders, you don't want to send 5 and 6 a lot. You need to force him to find the gaps, the really small gaps, and really make him earn it, or whether that's Prince Will, whether that's stunt blitzes and really getting creative with who we're sending, or, interior pressure and finding ways to flush him and making tackles in space. It's got to be something like that. So I really want to see what type of answers Tony White has when it comes to pressure with 4 and the strategies we're going to use and what type of approach we're going to take to make that happen.
What probably the most disappointing Tony White moment last year for us to end the half is when we send 7 and have 0
against Colorado.
Against Colorado. We line up right over and we send them over and they go 4 wide and we just send 7. And
I think the score was 13-7 at that point because that was right after the Jeff Sims touchdown.
It was 13-7. There was barely any time left. And again, on a 3rd and 10, we send 7, have no safety help, and then they unsurprisingly score a touchdown on us. And they find a guy who's covered by a linebacker. We can't send 7 against this team. It was the game breaker. This is year 2 for both coaches. Yeah. And I think Nebraska's elevated itself, into a different position, which brings me to, with
that said, dude, I mean, where are you at with this game, man? Give me your predictions. Nebraska, Colorado, 7.5 point spread, night game in Memorial Stadium, Coach Prime and Lincoln. What are your thoughts?
When I first watched the North Dakota State, I was really feeling like I was going to pick Colorado. Just because, again, Shedeur Sanders is so impressive. The Travis Hunter, the game that he played, he really looked like a better wide receiver. And when you face 2 top 5 draft picks, especially when one of them is a QB, it's hard to win games. And they're always going to be in a game when you have someone who is as talented as Shedeur Sanders. But on the tape watch, they aren't deep. Yeah, they're one-dimensional. Their defense, their line wasn't as impressive as you want it to be. They allowed the teams to run the ball, and we're elite at running the ball. We were elite at running the ball last year with a one-dimensional offense. I mean, welcome to the new era where we have a guy who's going to be NFL ready, and you're going to have to respect us, and you cannot stack the box unless you want to pay. Now, this is 6:30. This is at night. We've had a lot of time to prep.
To drink.
This is scary. This is a scary place. The light show, everything else. I think it's more than 3-point advantage, when you come into a night game at Memorial Stadium. Matt Rhule has developed a better team. I think the transfer portal is great. We saw it work with Nair. We saw it work with Banks. I think it can work a little bit with their D-line, but it only goes so far. And Matt Rhule has really developed this team in a way that we haven't seen before. And Bo Pelini could do it with some time. But this is some incredible work from him. I just think we're top to bottom a better team than Colorado, even though they might have us at quarterback for now. But Dylan Raiola is going to be there. He's
and
that good.
Shedeur won't.
Yeah, and Shedeur won't be there. I think we win big. We saw teams figure them out. North Dakota State, they knew the recipe. We got great tape on them. We got great film. We kicked their tails. 42-24. This is you want the hype train? Dylan's gonna give it to you.
Boy,
their defense is Swiss cheese. I think our running backs take the pressure. I think Emmett, Ramir, Gabe, they rip some off. Our defense, it's not revenge. It's not a revenge game, but it is some redemption. It's some redemption for them. And again, we learned to play the 3-3-5. We are a much better team than game 2 last year. All these guys came back. We're not scared. We're prepared this week. Yeah, we're not scared. We're prepared.
clearly, I agree with a lot of what you said. We went over a lot of these X factors and everything. I think there's a lot of things here the Huskers have going for them. So I am feeling pretty good. The thing for me is if we have an ability to attack this secondary in a way that we saw North Dakota try to go at it with these man beaters, these quick slants, these like swing dump offs, drawn up QB draws, just ways to find holes in his defense, and it really worked. And so even if they come out with more zone in this game, then I think we can attack that zone and really look to, for those high lows and make these safeties choose. And we know we have a quarterback who can take shots downfield. We saw exactly Shedeur do the same thing against North Dakota last week on those high lows. And that's where he found his guys downfield wide open. So I think we have an opportunity to do the exact same thing. And like I said, I really think that Colorado might be horribly one-dimensional, even worse than last year. And in that world where we're not turning the ball over, I think we're going to win this game. And I was right with you in the preseason predictions, or in the predictions video going into the predictions video. I had originally written down on the sheet that Nebraska was going to lose to Colorado. I flipped it in the video while we were making the video. And now I'm feeling pretty good about this game. Although I'm not feeling good enough to pick Nebraska to cover the spread, I am going to pick Colorado to cover the spread. So I'm going to go Nebraska 34-27. Nebraska wins. Maybe Colorado scores a touchdown near the end to give themselves a shot. But overall, I think Nebraska is going to be able to control this clock and keep this game in check and keep Shedeur at bay long enough to win the game in Lincoln. So I'm looking forward to it, man. And I do want to shout out from the Discord, Woo Sox with his 41-7 prediction last week. So he won the predictions contest. So if you want to join the predictions contest, join the Discord down below. Hang out with us each week. We talk Husker football in there, and follow us on, or join us on Patreon, where we do film breakdowns of the season, of games, reactions, PFF grade reactions when they drop, and watching Colorado film and everything else. So we appreciate you guys for hanging with us. But as always, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Big Red Homestead, and guys, we'll see you next time.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.